Shelly Blanco stands in the dining room of the family home in Perry, FLA. On Friday, May 19, 2017, "We are ready for Rudy to come home," said Blanco of her husband, seen with their daughter in the background, who is being detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials in Wakulla, FLA. Sometimes, the course of one's life can be altered in a matter of moments. A seemingly insignificant event, like being stopped by police because of a faulty taillight, can have catastrophic consequences, especially if you're living in this country illegally. One day, you're living the American dream. The next, you're being deported. For the millions of undocumented immigrants in the U.S., the Trump administration's focus on enforcing deportation laws has caused heartache and stress. However, those in support of strict immigration laws have found President Trump's new policies refreshing. He came in with a stronger mandate than any president on immigration since Teddy Roosevelt, says Dan Stein, head of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, which favors limiting legal immigration. In 1907, Roosevelt shared his view that all newcomers to the nation should assimilate entirely, abandoning the language and traditions of their homeland. Trump campaigned on extending the wall to protect more areas along the Mexican border, deporting more categories of undocumented immigrants, limiting legal immigration and ending citizenship rights for babies born in the U.S. to undocumented parents. Just days after his inauguration, Trump issued executive orders that proposed hiring 15,000 Immigration and Border Patrol officers, increasing coordination with local police on immigration enforcement and implementing stricter oversight of visa screening and distribution. His priorities for deportation, unlike former President Obama's, include those who are in the U.S. without documentation, even if they haven't been convicted of a crime, during the first 100 days of the administration. For instance, the number of people arrested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement who are not criminals jumped 157% compared with the same period in 2016, says Greg Chen, Director of Government Relations for the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA. AILA considers the new focus on deporting all undocumented immigrants a danger to due process and humanitarian needs, as well as indiscriminate. The administration is now apprehending far more people who have no negative factors, Chen says. Stein counters that it's a ridiculous concept that undocumented workers with no criminal record should be spared deportation just because they haven't gone out and murdered someone. Stein says Trump has already discouraged illegal immigration into the U.S., an action he suggests will benefit the country, citing the nation's inability to provide for everyone who'd like to reside in America. So people who apply through legal channels and wait their turn should have priority. Stein says, fairness is a fundamental American value. Trump's enforcement policies have affected families nationwide, including a young woman who worries her reprieve under a program for young immigrants will evaporate, a husband and entrepreneur with deep ties in his community who made a mistake at age 24, and a father with no criminal record whose troubles started with the delayed delivery of a forwarded letter. Here are their stories. Grisa Martinez rose us when she was 7. Grisa Martinez Roses collected seashells as she walked along the Rio Grande border in Mexico with her family, anticipating a better life just across the cold waters. She left her bag of shells at the place where they planned to swim across the next day, leaving behind a sluggish economy with few educational opportunities for her and her 3 sisters. Her parents bought a house in Dallas, and years later, Martinez Roses, now 29, attended college, setting an example for her sisters. One day, her father, who worked selling pallets to pay for her books at Texas A&M University, was pulled over by police for not making a complete stop, and in an instant their lives unraveled. With no driver's license, he was deported within a week. If you have a house, a dog, you stay out of trouble. Your kids are in college. Everything should be fine. That's what we thought, says Martinez Roses, whose perspective changed the moment her dad was deported and their lives upended. 10 years later, she took advantage of a program called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, that gives students and high school graduates who arrived as kids, known as Dreamers, a reprieve from deportation. The Obama administration program is renewable every 2 years, and although Trump campaigned against it, he has yet to dismantle the program. However, its future is uncertain, although there are other paths toward citizenship, such as employer-sponsored residency. They're not options Martinez Roses can pursue. So she worries. Her father is ill now, living in Mexico with little access to health care for his diabetes. She wants to visit, but is worried that she won't be allowed to return to the U.S., where she lives near Washington, D.C., and works as an advocacy and policy director at United We Dream, a pro-immigrant group with more than 100,000 members. Every day, Martinez Roses worries about DACA's renewal and the possibility of being deported. She must reapply in November. I don't want any family to feel like mine does, which is broken, says Martinez Roses, who helps her mother pay medical costs associated with cancer treatments and contributes to her sister's college education. I've grown up in the state of Texas. I belong here. Immigrants are part of the community. An attack on one of them is an attack on everyone, Martinez Roses says. Rudy Blanco and Shelly Blanco, 42, voted for Donald Trump. She never expected his push to deport bad hombres would land her husband in jail. Shelly's husband, Rudy Blanco, had arrived in the U.S. from Cuba at age 8 during the mass emigration known as the Mariel boat lift. On the boat ride to freedom, the lights of Key West flickered in the distance. The family now lives in Shelly's hometown of Perry, FLA. She met Rudy while visiting the Keys and fell into a whirlwind romance, marrying in 1995. He was 22, and she was 20. Cubans like the Blancos were given permanent residency, but Rudy's parents never applied for citizenship for the family because of their fear of government, the result of living for years under communism. When Rudy was 24, he made a mistake that would 21 years later fracture his family. Their daughter, Hannah, they also have a younger son, Noah, was born prematurely at 28 weeks, and they faced the pressure of mounting medical bills. Looking for a quick fix, Rudy sold a gram of cocaine. His wife says, he was not a user. Shelly says, it's a lesson he's had to live with for 20 years. Before mandatory minimum sentencing became a law, Rudy's arrest might have meant a decades-long stint behind bars. Instead, he received probation and was required to perform community service. His lawyer at the time assured him it would anti-affect his immigration status. When he applied for citizenship in 2004, he passed his test and a clerk reiterated his lawyer's assurances, telling Rudy that the old transgression wouldn't be a problem and to expect a letter with the date of his naturalization ceremony. When the letter arrived, it announced his deportation instead, because relations with Cuba were still strained. Immigration officials did not actually deport him, but they had him report in weekly at first, and then annually for the next 13 years. By his May 2016 check-in, the Obama administration had reopened relations with Cuba, making deportations possible. Then, the Trump administration came to power, promising to increase immigration enforcement. On May 9, Shelly and Rudy, who had spent only 5 days apart during their marriage, stopped at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Tallahassee, expecting a perfunctory appointment. She watched helplessly as he was taken to the other side of a glass wall. I watched Rudy completely deflate, and I knew it was happening. They were detaining him, she says. That moment felt like a death. I didn't know when I was going to see him again. She sees him now via video connection at the Wakulla, FLA, jail, where he was being held in July awaiting deportation. Rudy owns a home remodeling company and usually works outdoors all day. So being confined and separated from his family has been depressing. Shelly says, he passes the time teaching others how to speak English. Starting with y'all. Shelly is now pressing for a pardon on the drug conviction, asylum for her husband and a stop to the deportation. An online fundraising effort is helping pay legal bills and includes comments from community members about the contributions Blanco has made to their town and his adopted country, including the fact that daughter Hannah serves in the U.S. Coast Guard. Shelly, who was born in the U.S., will move with him to Cuba if he is deported. He's my soulmate. He's my breath, she says. But she is scared he'll be treated harshly because he's still considered a maggot for leaving. She adds, immigration law has failed when it allows a child into the country and then doesn't encourage his family to apply for citizenship. She says, if we allow them to come in, don't set them up for failure. She adds, during Trump's campaign, he talked of tossing violent criminals out of the country and evaluating undocumented people case by case. She notes, not deporting someone who has done so much. Luis Barrios was tooling along in a company truck on his job cleaning out septic tanks when a faulty taillight landed him in trouble. Barrios, who lives in Derby, Con, and turns 52 in September, fled Guatemala in 1992, fearing for his life after his father was murdered. He felt he had to leave. Later, a brother was killed, as well as the niece and nephew of his wife of 20 years, Dora Beltran. In 1993, Barrios applied for asylum, which is available to people if they are part of a group. In this case, his family, that likely would be persecuted if they returned to their countries. The notice of Barrios' case hearing was mailed to an old address and then forwarded to his new address. It arrived the day after the scheduled hearing and, in 1998, the judge ordered him deported for missing the proceedings. He's been fighting that decision ever since. According to his attorney, Aaron O'Neill Baker of the Hartford Legal Group, because of that limbo, when state police pulled him over for the taillight, Barrios landed in jail for 5 weeks, the start of a roller coaster ride for his family and igniting protests from his supporters in the community. He's always helping others whenever they have a need. And my dad is very kind, says his daughter, Jessica, a college student. Colleagues from the septic company where he has worked for 13 years and others in the community have rallied around the family and staged protests in his honor. Barrios says he's always done what immigration officials asked. We work hard in this country. I tried to be working, honest, pay my taxes and do everything by the law. Barrios has 4 children, all born in the U.S., ages 11 to 19. Losing their breadwinner and father would be devastating, says Jessica, the oldest. Moving the whole family to Guatemala would end work. She adds, because of safety concerns, few opportunities for school and employment, and the fact that her 11-year-old twin sisters don't speak Spanish. Barrios says he has almost no family left there, no place to live, few work prospects and safety concerns. I'm afraid if I have to go back to Guatemala, he says. I don't have anything in Guatemala. In Connecticut, by contrast, he owns a home with a pool, has a job he loves and his family Yet after years of just needing to check in with officials, immigration officials ordered him out on a May 4 flight under the new increased enforcement by the Trump administration. Barrios had to break the news to his twins, who were devastated by the idea of losing their father. Less than 12 hours before his flight, he won a reprieve. Sen. Richard Blumenthal, D. Con, and other lawmakers stepped in. He now has been approved to stay in the U.S. until March 2019, and Jessica, as a U.S. citizen, can apply for him to stay longer. Meanwhile, O'Neill Baker is still working on his asylum case. The Barrios family, with about 60 church and community members who had helped them, celebrated the reprieve over tamales and grilled steak. Barrios got a very rare 2-year stay. His lawyer says, "Unfortunately, a lot of people exactly like Mr. Barrios are not as lucky."